Now, this is a video, could be about first-time land buyer, first-time land user, leasing, someone's letting you hunt the land for free, and you're really excited about setting it up and getting going on the land. And I think a lot of times, and I want you to stick around, because if you're not into a new land, there's still gonna be something for you out of this video if you've been hunting the land for 20 years even. So this is an important topic, because when people are looking at new land to lease, own, use, whatever it is, there's a lot of ingredients that people are looking for. I'll go over a couple just basic ones in the past. People don't want to be next to public land. Well, I've seen some in wilderness areas where there's miles and miles of public land and you're at the dead end road and you have 10 acres, 40 acres at the end of that dead end road. It can be outstanding because you can attract deer from 2 or 3 miles away because of a monoculture wilderness area. And it's all boring the same. It's could be all hardwoods, could be all swamp, whatever it is. And you're drawing deer, and you have that incredible option because you're so far off the road and where other people can park, you don't see a lot of people. I've seen that time and time again in big open public land areas. Believe it or not, there's a lot of public land out there that people just do not hunt. Some with monsters on it. I see it all the time next to client properties around the entire north half of the country. So public land is one thing. Hardwoods, people say, oh, we gotta have these beautiful oaks. We gotta have these beautiful hardwoods to manage. And hardwoods, if you have a high percentage of hardwoods on your land, and it's really that quality timber, it's going to do more harm than good as it relates to all wildlife, not just whitetails. The lower the timber value, the better the wildlife value, and that's a general rule that you can see across the board. If someone's managing for quality timber, you're never going to really receive or find that potential of whitetail or wildlife potential on your land. It's great to have diversity. Diversity is key. And no, not various types of grass in a field, that's still grass. Various types of conifers, that's still conifer. And various types of hardwood, it's still hardwood. And even when you have oaks in that situation, those oaks are limited. They're dropping acorns in October. Maybe they're around in early November. If it's a white oak, more end of September. But they're gobbled up. It's a very short-term solution. And a lot of times, the bigger and broader and more mass-producing oaks that you have, the fewer wildlife than you expect to see on your property, because there's simply no holding cover. Diversity is key. But let's take those couple of ingredients out of the picture. And really, when I see something that I cringe a little bit, is people say, well, the property has to have water. And folks, there's a few things I want you to consider about water when you're looking for. When a property has a lot of water. Now, sometimes that indicates diversity of habitat, which is a good thing. So sometimes that water can say, well, we have water, we have hills, and so you're going to have some diversity of habitat because of those wetland areas. But that aside, using water to attract wildlife or deer on your property, just because you have water, unless you're in some of the arid southwest areas, maybe some southern portions, you're not going to necessarily have more deer on your land just because you have water. So when you have water already on your land, it hinders that ability for you to actually define movement to that water source that you could otherwise add. So having water on the property already is not necessarily a good thing. Now, number 2, with water, deer do not need to drink every day. They don't need to take a drink every few weeks if they have green vegetation that's growing. And I'll use an example. I have buckwheat growing around in front of me. We have this buckwheat. If they wanted to eat buckwheat is full of moisture. And the more they eat of this buckwheat, the less they need to take a drink of this water right down here. So water alone isn't necessarily a good thing, and it should never be an ingredient that you're actually looking for on land. And I'll give you this example right here. There's a beautiful man-made water hole. Perfect size, deer can play in it, can slosh around in it. I don't like it because you can't see over the bank over there. When deer can't see over a bank, when they can't see over a fence, like a privacy fence, when they can't see over a log jam, they don't like to be there because they're sitting ducks for predators. They have that predatory instinct where they don't want to be 3 feet away from something that can kill them and they can't see. We have another water hole on the other side of the property that's made like this, and it's beautiful. The deer can actually be in the water, look on the outside of the berm. Here, it drops down sharply behind, and I see these water holes don't get a lot of action because the deer are forced to be in here. So that's something I don't like about this water hole. Number 2, this water hole is located in the back of a 2.5 acre food plot. It's in the back corner. How can we get here to hunt? We could get right back there. There's a tree. We could come in from the side, but because of the size of this food plot, we're setting ourselves up for failure by even coming in and hunting this area. It's hard to get in because it's around this food, And let's face it, if the deer get used to me coming in over there, that's a bad thing. You know, if they're not bedding there, if they're not using that location to bed in because I'm routinely walking in to hunt or use that water hole, that is not a good thing. I don't want the deer to get used to they have to live over here, not here in this situation. You don't want to get deer, especially back in here where it's a really important habitat. So this water hole right here, stand location, very poor. And now we have a gun blind about 175 yards back that way, but I don't consider gun season a good time to be watching this water hole. I want to be able to use this during the rut, during October into November. We happen to be in Minnesota where the rut is in early November, but I want to be able to sit and hunt this with a bow stand. If you're putting a water hole out and you can't hunt it with a bow stand, that is a really bad thing. So huntability. A lot of times you already have water on your land, but can you hunt it? And if you can't, during bow season, you're pulling deer away from your bow stands to go to water. I can happen to get in on this point that's about 150 yards back. It drops off. There's some really good cruising activity that goes around a bench on that point. I can go all the way down the side of the field over here, come into that point, sit up there. Incredible daytime cruising opportunity. That's more location for a potential water hole. Or maybe out on the side, 75 yards back. I can put a stand and it's a great cruising area. But with this water over here, that great cruising area becomes a potential for not seeing deer as bucks during the rut are focusing on this water, and I'm actually pulling them away from that stand over there out on that point or this cruising stand behind me. And so in that case, this water hole is hurting a couple of great stand locations because it's simply pulling deer away from the stand location. So a lot of times, again, water, it's not going to attract more deer to your land. It's only defining movement. If it's defining movement in the wrong spot and pulling them away from your stand location, that's a bad thing. And third, a lot of times water that's already on a parcel is in the form of big ponds, big swamps, and big river systems or creek systems that stretch all the way through the property here and there. And that makes it impossible for you to add water by your deer stands and actually set up a great rut hunt, a great mid-October hunt, maybe even a December hunt, where water sources and green vegetation is shrinking or gone or non-existent, and you have the only water source in the area that's open that deer will flock to. Some of my best water holes I've seen on client lands are in January, February, where it's in the corner of a creek where it's open, corner of a swamp or something where there's water exposed, and deer will flock to those locations, but it's after the deer season. So even if this is open in February, March, and it represents only water source in the area, that's not necessarily a good thing. So a lot of times, existing water sources on a new land, a new hunting land, are too big and open, and it diminishes that value and eliminates it most of the time for actually defining movement to the water hole in front of a stand location. Again, you're not going to attract any more deer because of that. And then a lot of times the water hole is in a bad spot to actually hunt, like this one right here. I actually don't even know what to do with this because it's pulling deer away from this area. I had someone that used to work for the state of Minnesota. He told me I could fill water holes in, and if I do, it'll be this spot right here. The other water hole looks pretty good. We can hunt it. We have a stand location picked out there. It actually supports a couple stand locations nearby. That's a good water hole. Doesn't mean that you have to have 3 or 4 stand locations over the water hole. It just means you want at least one for a given wind, and then this water hole would support that one in there if it's in that same cruising line. This is above the cruising line. But that cruising line extends for about 100 yards behind me. It wraps on this inside about 40 yards down and goes right up to this point. So water hole down on that cruising stand would actually support both stands, the point and the cruising stand, the cruising bench stand. So think about that when you're looking for your next great deer hunting parcel. All things being equal, if you can get the same level of diversity, great hunter access, it's in a good neighborhood, it appears that you have good neighbors on the surface, always choose the one that's dry as opposed to the one that has water sources already there, because the majority of the time that water is going to be located in the wrong spot. It's going to be the wrong size, too open, and then on top of that, just because you have water on the property does not mean you're going to have more deer or wildlife in general on the property. Completely different in Oklahoma, Texas, where that hot, dry temperature and lack of green vegetation might pull animals in from a long distance. That is not the case in the Midwest. Bucks are not going to come to this water hole from miles away to hit it because there's water miles away. There's water a half mile away. We only lose our opportunity to define movement that's no different than mock scrapes. So when you're looking for your next great parcel out there to hunt, consider a dry parcel over a wet parcel, and then you can really enjoy the benefits of hunting over water during October, the November rut, and into December, when all other green sources of vegetation and moisture have diminished or all been eliminated, and all other water sources are drying up. Deer really need that water. They don't need much water right here during the middle of summer. It would seem that way when it's hot out. It was 86 yesterday, that they would flock to the water, but they really do not, because they have all this green vegetation, the hay, the soybeans, green leaves in the woods. So try water this year. Hopefully you can add it to your property and define some great water hole stand locations for this hunting season.